Give me one second.
Toes would show. Sometimes not. All right.
Ready?
You ready to go live?
Go live. Okay, hello everybody. How are you? Anything new in your lives? Well, this is our second official press conference, as we had determined previously. And a lot has happened in the past week, more that's happened in the country in the past month, I think. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, especially around the GoFundMe and alternatives for funding that have occurred. There's quite a bit of updates with that. I guess what we'll say first is, obviously, we know GoFundMe has pulled the funding and has been put under some very serious pressure. And as a result, they've just decided they're going to refund everybody who donated to the campaign. All 170,000 people are going to be getting donations, getting their donations refunded to them. In the first day that we set up the alternative on Give, Send, Go to replace GoFundMe, it hit $1.5 million in the first day. Sorry, under 24 hours. I think it's closer to $2 million now. We've also had a lot of people in the Bitcoin community, which is new to a lot of you here. And the latest note I just got on a multi-sig wallet, which it's not really all that important. There's $300,000 just in that account in Bitcoin alone, as well as many other alternative wallets that people have just created a wallet, posted online, say throw your money here and we're going to give it to the Freedom Convoy. So a lot of people have been very concerned over the censorship, but I think we have it under control. Our trajectory now is even better than it was with GoFundMe, but we'll talk about that more as you have any questions. I think that's it for now on my end. We have Keith here, who is our legal representative, so if you have any questions for him directly, he's here to answer your questions. So yeah, let's start. What do you guys want to know?
Lincoln J with Rebel News. Now, have you guys considered taking any legal action towards the issue with the money being seized from GoFundMe? Is that in consideration at all? Are you able to comment on that?
Sure. Given that the marketplace has spoken and people have lost faith in GoFundMe, given that GoFundMe is going to be on its own initiative returning the money to the donors who are supportive of the truckers' efforts for freedom, it would just be a waste of time to sue them. We don't need to sue them. We're focused on moving forward and supporting the efforts of so many Canadians who are concerned about what's happening with the government.
Now, has GoFundMe reached out to you guys at all? Have you heard from any representative from GoFundMe?
No.
We just got an alert and a notice on our file saying thank you, but no thanks. We are going to terminate your campaign. And initially what they said was they were going to terminate it, and anybody who doesn't request a refund, those monies will be held for them to do with as they please. And they suggested we're likely going to donate it to a charity of their choice. And it was pressure from the competitor, Give, Send, Go, who issued a strategy for some of the donors. And you now see Ron DeSantis and the Attorney General of Florida, and now a number of other states have decided they want a public inquiry into GoFundMe. So I think that over time is going to work itself out. But we had no notice. I mean, you were in contact with them over the phone. There was communication. It seemed to be okay. But the Mayor Watson put publicly on Twitter an announcement saying thank you to GoFundMe for working with us to ensure that this campaign was, I can't remember the verbiage he used, but that it was shut down. So it was clearly direct interference from the government to cancel this campaign, and we should all be very, very worried about that, in my humble opinion.
And to be clear, when we received the email notifying us that they were effectively canceling the campaign and seizing people's hard-earned dollars that had donated to the truckers, and were going to divert them to a charity of their choice unless people went through a refund process, they sent us that email simultaneously with posting it on the GoFundMe account. So we found out when the world found out. There was no prior warning. And we provided extensive legal documentation, written correspondence from me to address all of the issues they'd raised. In their announcement, they talked about information and the collaboration with the Ottawa Police Service, and the Ottawa Police Service issued a tweet congratulating and praising GoFundMe for being responsive and taking down these donations.
Just may you please talk loudly?
Sure, we're not speaking loudly enough.
No.
So the Ottawa Police released, I believe, a statement stating that they were going to be arresting anybody that's bringing supplies to the truckers, right? Has anyone from the Ottawa Police reached out to you guys and gave you guys any details on that? Have you heard any word about that happening as of yet?
Not as far as I know.
Chris has been in contact with them, but he's not here, unfortunately, so I can't.
Yeah, the folks that run the Operations Center are aware of it. It's going to be acted upon this evening. We're going to try and stay within the law, but they're also going to challenge it to see if this is even legal. Can the police chief or the mayor actually order that sort of thing? And just by way of context, a bit of background, it's worth noting that with the Prime Minister having essentially disappeared from the scene, Mayor Watson has been effectively left in charge of the operation. His strategy, as far as we can assess, is to starve out the convoy in every way possible, i.e. money, fuel, food, medicine, that sort of stuff. And to us, this is just one more little incremental step in a battle which he's been losing.
And something interesting, we had an event this morning at the stage, at the main stage area. And when I had to go up there, since I just did this, because Mayor Watson doesn't believe in salting his sidewalks, the police stopped us 3 blocks away from the stage, and despite us trying to talk to the police and allow us to have the shuttle drive me to the stage, the police said absolutely no. So I had a team that helped carry me to 3 blocks to the stage. But it wasn't Ottawa Police, it was OPP, which I thought very interesting. So we do have a number of police services around the area: Peel Police, Toronto Police, OPP, Ottawa. It's interesting, but I just thought it was, I don't know what it means specifically. I just thought it was very odd that, is it perhaps because the Ottawa Police have a sense of community, and because of that, people know who they are, and this is where they live, these are the friends and family, so they needed to put OPP officers there? Maybe not, I have no idea, but just very strange what's going on.
If you could just reiterate one more time, so can you just go over again, so the legal, if you guys are taking any legal action towards GoFundMe?
Not at this time.
Has anyone from the federal government, provincial government, anyone like that reached out to you guys? Any communication whatsoever, or?
Behind the scenes, not in the governing party, but in the opposition party, we've had people make overtures and reach out to us. And we're open to talking to anybody, obviously. It hasn't materialized into any formal conversation and meeting yet. It may. But it seems to be there is some will. They're just figuring out a strategy to connect with us. And I do imagine that the Liberal Party is doing the same, because there seems to be a divide splitting up, at least from our sources inside the Liberal Party. There seems to be a divide, and people are very frustrated. Elected MPs in the Liberal Party are quite embarrassed that they're the center stage of a controversy where the Prime Minister runs and hides and calls us all names like a 5-year-old.
Harrison Faulkner for True North. Have you been in contact with any members from the Conservative Party of Canada?
In an official capacity, as I just indicated, not in any official capacity, but I'll leave it there.
If I may ask, I'm also with True North. If Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or somebody from the government reaches out and is open to negotiation, would you be willing to negotiate a deal where you maybe don't get everything you want, but you get some things you want, maybe like the trucker vaccine mandate lifted, or maybe a test or vaccine option? Would you be willing to negotiate something with the Prime Minister or the government?
Well, the first thing is they need to call. So we'll evaluate that when they pick up the phone and call us and say we want to talk. I would assume that all politicians and all political parties, they want to figure out how to reverse this, end the situation in a way that it's safe for everybody, and they don't come off looking in such a bad light, right? And we're sympathetic to that. We understand that. We get that. We know how politics works. But the first thing they got to do is call us. So we're sitting there. We're waiting by the phone.
Tamara, is there any concern that you might have the same issue with Give, Send, Go as you've had with GoFundMe?
Not that I'm aware of, no. We've chatted, our accountant's been dealing with them, and they seem really good. They run it a little bit differently, and so there's no concern there. That's my part anyways, yeah.
We've put in place, and they offered it, extensive written legal assurances that under no circumstances would they withhold the donations made by those who support the efforts of the Truckers for Freedom. And we're very comfortable that the monies are going to flow to the truckers and in support of their efforts to cause the government to drop these restrictions on charter rights.
And in addition to that, I received an email a couple of hours ago from Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report, connecting me with his executive team to build a platform on locals as well. They want to help us, them and Rubble want to help us fundraise and ensure that we don't have any issues with any sort of censorship in the future. So I'm going to be having a meeting with them tonight, and that will be an additional place where people will be able to donate for a cause.
Are you able to comment on the surge and contain strategy also that the Ottawa police said that they would be implementing the other day? Because by the looks of it outside, it doesn't look like anything's changed.
I think, I'm going to ask Tom to respond, but I just would leave it up to, I think a lot of this has been a lot of bluff trying to be antagonistic towards the truckers to get them angry. And everybody knows this has turned out just to be the biggest party, the most friendly atmosphere of a gathering of people in Ottawa's history. Like, it's amazing. So it's shocking, quite frankly, some of the language some of the elected officials in Ottawa have been using. I can't believe it, but that's their issue. We're here just trying to be positive, and we're just waiting for the government. Tom?
Yeah, I think in terms of an actual strategy, as a lifelong intelligence officer who served in a variety of environments, I would say the opposition to this point doesn't actually have a strategy. They have a sort of weak goal in that they want the streets cleared, but they have no real idea how they want to get there. Also, the CEO, the boss of the opposition, Prime Minister Trudeau, has disappeared and left them leaderless, which makes it difficult for them as well. So with specific reference to your surge and contain strategy, it's very clear that Mayor Watson wants us starved out, hence the cutting off the water, cutting off the fuel, cutting off the food, cutting off access. And they're starting to put more pressure on by handing out tickets and doing this sort of thing. They're trying to create an atmosphere of fear to scare everyone, to get them to go away. I think where their surge and contain strategy is failing is folks realize that Mayor Watson is, I mean, I don't want to be insulting, but he's a kind of a puppet for Trudeau. The two of them are tied close together. They're tangled up in the same SNC Lavalin scandals through, multi-billion-dollar problem here in Ottawa with our LRT, etc. And yeah, there just isn't a strategy. So what you're seeing is a whole series of disconnected tactics. So as somebody who's used to sort of facing opposition coming at you, you sort of look and say, okay, is this coordinated opposition where they hit you here, hit you here, hit you there, and you say, wow, I'm hurting? Or are you looking at them and going, wow, what are these guys doing? They're all over the place. They don't have a strategy. And I think that's where we're at. So the surge and contain thing is a tactic. It's failing, I would assess. It's going to get people more upset, and it's going to help us. So yeah, anyway, that's my kind of immediate thoughts on that.
if I may as well.
Yeah, right.
So, since early last week, when I got set up in the Volunteer Coordination Center, I've been in constant communication with police liaisons from the Ottawa Police, RCMP, OPP, and the PPS, the Parliamentary Protective Service. We've been completely open in sharing information about anything that could be public safety or security related. So I was surprised by the chief's most recent statement. It was strong language. I also am cautiously optimistic that it's more of a, I won't say bluff tactic, but a pressure tactic. But when I see the disconnect between what's happening on the ground from what you're hearing in the leadership level,
100%.
that's a common theme in law enforcement. The top says one thing, the ground, that's not reflective of the ground level. That's my experience in the RCMP anyway. When you talk to most of these police officers on the ground, like, the rapport has been good. My relationship with the liaisons has been great. Like, it's very open and transparent, and we're trying to help each other every day make sure that this stays peaceful. Because my primary concern has always been the individual or small group bad actors that are gonna try and bring, tarnish the reputation of what we're trying to accomplish here. And they know that. The police all know that. They all know that this group, like at the ground level, they all know that this group is here for everybody. And I make a point of saying that to other police officers when I see them. It's like, just so you know, in my mind and in my heart, we're doing this for all of you as well. And, you know, and they speak about, I mean, the big scary term that I've heard that most people are kind of getting into a panic about is labeling us as terrorists and we're holding this city hostage. And that's, to me, that's laughable. Like, the last 8 years of my career, and for the last, right here in the city, I've been on Parliament Hill and all of these buildings countless times for these major events. You know, Canada Day being the big token one almost every year. And when you go downtown here right now, the atmosphere that you're gonna see, I've never seen people so joyful, right? The Canada Day doesn't even hold a candle compared to this, right? People of every background, complete strangers, just dancing in the streets, coming up and hugging each other and like cheering for freedom. That's what this, families with kids, terrorists, there's bouncy castles out there. People walking around with their families, kids in tow, and every time I see them, are you having fun? Yeah, right? Like,
Just, can I follow up with the terrorist thing? Just by way of background, I'm ex-military intelligence. I also worked for the RCMP for 6 years in national security, the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team. I'm one of the few court experts in the country on terrorism. And I'm a declared court expert both in criminal court, which is to say Ontario Superior Court, as well as federal court. And I've testified both on behalf of the RCMP against an Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorist plot that was operating partly out of Ottawa. And, just for the Islamophobes out there, I've also testified a couple of times in court on behalf of Muslims who have been wrongly accused of being terrorists when in fact they were guilty of DWI, driving while Islamic. So, if we smell a terrorist, if we see the hint of a terrorist, if I see two words together, which to me connect towards political violence, the first call we have is to the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team of the RCMP. Second call goes to the Ottawa Police Intelligence Section. So we have got no information, nowhere, nothing, of anybody operating within our ranks or even around us who has the intention to carry out an act of political violence by terrorism.
well, and on that note, I actually know the officer in charge of the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team here in Ottawa. We have a great relationship, or in the past we did anyway. I've met with him multiple times over the last roughly 4 years of my time at the team here in Ottawa. I was leading an initiative to go around to senior managers of the RCMP and different units to try and convince them that the best utilization of my team here in Ottawa, instead of spending the majority of our time doing protective operations, was to become a designated national counter-terrorist hostage rescue team. So when I hear those comments about we're taking the city hostage and we're terrorists, like I've spent the last 4 years of my career trying to convince the RCMP to make my team what the FBI hostage rescue team is in the United States. And we had a little bit of traction with it because they actually sent me to Quantico, Virginia, and I got to train with the FBI hostage rescue team for a week. So if there was any hint of any kind of legitimacy to this notion that we're terrorists, we would have nothing to do with that, obviously. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion.
We're also seeing some articles online stating that tow truck companies around the city of Ottawa are denying service requested by the government. Are you guys able to comment on that? Do you have any more details on that?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. The short answer is tow truck companies right across the country in Alberta, Ontario, whatever, have either politely refused requests from the government to assist, or not so quite politely refused requests for assistance. We had a gentleman call us up from Buffalo, New York. He's got a big Class 8 truck dealership just outside of Buffalo. He's also got a series of highway records, which I think are like Class A tow trucks that can tow like super heavy loads. And he gets a phone call in his office, and it's, "Hi, it's the federal government calling. You guys have highway tractors that, highway tow trucks?" And he said, "Yeah, I do. Can you bring them up to Canada?" And he was like, "Why would I do that? Like, what's going on? What's going on?" And they said, "Well, it's that thing in Ottawa." And of course, he knew exactly what was going on. So he politely told them that he couldn't do operations in Canada for insurance reasons. But what it shows is the federal government in Ottawa is reaching all the way down to Buffalo, New York, trying to find a tow truck, and they can't get one. Because the trucking industry is somewhat of a brotherhood, much like the military, much like the police. And we do kind of all know each other. And no tow truck company that wants to be in business for more than a week after this is going to help out. So, like I said, they're reaching all the way to Buffalo, New York, trying to scrounge up tow trucks. So what's actually happening now, we have a network of tow truck operators who are talking to each other to see who's being called and who's not. Short answer, they're having a hard time getting tow trucks.
Hi, Beth Bache, post-millennial. Last week you said the Conservatives would be wise to remove Aaron O'Toole as leader and install someone like Pierre Poilievre as leader. Since then, O'Toole has been removed, and just yesterday, Pierre announced his intention to run for leader. Do you think the convoy is having an effect on the Conservative Party and its current climate?
I was, in a trolly way, running the hashtag nothing to do with truckers, because there were people putting out in the, we'll call it the legacy media, saying that, policy officials are looking at change, but it has nothing to do with truckers. No. Is it exclusively us? I think the will was there, but I think we might have just pushed everything over the edge. And there are a lot of people, beyond us, on the ground that have been very upset with the direction of the Conservative Party ever since not even Andrew Scheer as well was a problem. And this has been their opportunity to reverse course. And I think they realize that they need to go back to their core values. And I urge the Liberal Party to do the same thing. The Conservatives got to be conservatives, and Liberals got to be liberal. They got to abandon this cult-like practice of what they're doing with the progressive nonsense. So, to answer your question, I don't think it's exclusive. We all saw the right, but we're hopeful that change is on the horizon.
And have any residents of Ottawa been supportive? Because we frequently hear on mainstream media specifically the negative side of it.
We were served with an injunction application on behalf of a lawyer, personal injury lawyer, representing a person in the downtown, a resident, and we had an emergency application on Saturday afternoon. The lawyer chose to send us hundreds of pages of complex legal documents within the hour before the application. The judge agreed that it would be improper for that application to proceed. It would be unfair to our side, and that matter's been rescheduled to tomorrow afternoon at 1. In preparation for responding to the injunction application, particularly because it alleges an inappropriate level of impact to the residents in the downtown. We have had, at last report I received, which was early this morning, we've had over 110 residents of this community that have come forward and wanted to swear and have sworn affidavits to be used in the court proceeding to demonstrate and express their views that how well behaved the truckers have been, how they've been shoveling the sidewalks, how it's a festive environment, and how important it is to them that the truckers are here to show concern about the loss of freedoms and efforts to get them back. So it's been overwhelming that these people are usually reluctant to come forward and swear at court proceeding on their own initiative. So it's been quite remarkable.
Just to touch on what my friend here said, so there's been no indication that we're making any, that the convoy, the movement, is making any progress towards these mandates being lifted, which is the ultimate goal. Or is there anything we can comment on that?
Well,
any progress?
That one of the health official, I think it was the BC health official, said that they want to reevaluate the mandates and the passports. Was that in Ontario as well?
Doctors
Ontario
here
as well.
Yeah.
It's been happening over, I mean, it's little increments, you know, they'll put ticklers out, see how people respond to it. So I think you are seeing enough people within the political sphere realizing that, wait, they swung public opinion 40% in one poll in a week. Perhaps we should pay attention to this. So I think it's just going to take a little time for them to catch up. But you know.
Yeah, we've also seen, Premier Legault of Quebec back tax, which I was quite surprised with. He says he'll communicate. Premier Moe of Saskatchewan is sort of waffling and twisting, and he's kind of moving back, and I would say I think he's doing the right thing. Premier Kenny of Alberta has had a rough week. And he's been called out by his own RCMP for putting out false statements, etc. And I think you see Premier Kenny is now starting to backpedal, and rumors coming out of health officials in BC that they're backpedaling. And we've seen some federal health officials, you may have seen that headline in the Post that said, you know, they're considering getting rid of the mandates, brackets, it has nothing to do with the truckers. So I would say that what we have done is we've sort of hit the capital. The shockwaves have gone across the province, and you can feel them vibrating out across the country. Also, we're aware that the federal government told its employees last weekend, oh, don't come to work on Monday, there'll be all those truckers, but Tuesday it will be cleanup day, the truckers will be gone, and then everything's back to normal. And of course, here we are a week later. So I think if you're looking for signs of real progress, watch tomorrow morning when all the officials, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the advisors, the lobbyists, the mayors, the city councillors, all those people have to wake up, go to work tomorrow morning, and we're still here.
There's a large presence of out of jurisdiction police. There was, you know, over the weekend and during the week, Durham Police, York Region Police. What's the status of their presence? Do you guys have any update on whether they're going to leave? Or
no indication when they're going to leave, because I don't think they know when they're going to leave, and I don't think the mayor knows when they're going to leave. We've been having fun putting out pictures of gangs of police standing there, and I feel bad for them. You see like 12 guys from Durham Regional, they're all standing there kind of, you know, looking around talking, and then they walk down the end of the block, and then they talk some more. And we put up multiple pictures of these guys standing there. So the city of Ottawa is complaining about the extraordinary cost of the policing. It's like, well, you've got hundreds of guys standing there doing nothing because there's nothing going on. So yeah, the police are here. We don't mind it. We think it's great. We're encouraging people. If you see a police officer standing there, go over and say hello. That's not a badge and a uniform. That's an actual human being standing there. Right. So go talk to them. Find out where they're from. Find out what's going. I spent about 4 hours this week handing out our daily intelligence report, banging on cop car windows going, hi, my name's Tom. I'm an ex-intelligence officer. I'm here helping out. And I would say at the front line, we are 90 to 95% super positive. We took a little social visit out to the airport yesterday afternoon with a certain number of trucks, just for a little exercise of freedom of movement, just a social call to the airport to say hello. And I can tell you the first Ottawa police officer who talked to us, I could see his face, he was just like, oh my God, please do not tell me you're coming here. And he said, you know, you have to understand it's a tough situation. I said, oh, no, fine, we're just out, you know, a little exercise, a little, you know, social call, having a bit of fun, all's good. And then, we got 3 more cop cars following us up to the airport. But even though that guy was under a huge amount of pressure and he's getting heat from his bosses, like, what the heck are those guys doing at the airport? Super polite, super professional, no problem. So say hello to a cop. Go to the Adopt the Trucker site,
Yeah.
help out there. If you see a cop on the street, go say hello, help out there.
I think this is a question for Keith. So I'm just reading something on Twitter, another lawyer saying that, dear Freedom Convoy truckers, I'm hearing that some of you believe you have legal representation. That is wrong. Keith Wilson told court he's only acting for the leaders. Barber, Dichter, and Leach, you should contact a lawyer now about your legal risk and then offer to settle. What do you have to say to that? Are the truckers on their own as far as legal representation is concerned? And just your thoughts.
What's happening here and what we're witnessing, not just here, but in Toronto and other places around Canada and indeed in the United States, and for that matter around the world, this is an organic freedom movement. This is not a coordinated, orchestrated event at all. We have no idea who most of these truckers are and where they came from and how long they're staying. Some come today, leave tomorrow. There's a constant movement. There's far more Canadians arriving and driving through the streets with signs and Canadian flags and freedom slogans, and then there are even big trucks. It's really remarkable. The notion that any one lawyer or any one firm could somehow magically represent the thousands and thousands and probably tens of thousands of Canadians who are concerned about the loss of their freedoms and government overreach is obviously impossible. My clients are the 3 initial organizers that just met one another and came together organically. They didn't pre-plan anything, as well as the new not-for-profit corporation that has been established in accordance with all the accounting and legal requirements to help disperse the donations in support of the truckers and their expenses. So that's the only people I represent, and I've tried to make that clear. We have lots of other kind of ad hoc groups here and there. Any trucker who is concerned about where they stand legally should get legal advice. The class action lawsuit that's been filed, I don't do personal injury law and I don't do class action lawsuits, and we all know there's those kind of lawyers out there. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Just a quick question for either one of you here. Why don't you just come out and distance yourselves from Pat King, from the likes of Pat King, because he seems to pop up every now and then, and I was speaking to your PR person earlier just on our way here, and she said that she'd spoken to you and that there's some agreement here that you might want to put out a statement more aggressively perhaps. So this is a question because I met you guys last weekend and you were very clear that he's doing his own thing and he was part of this early on, but you've distanced yourselves from him. I'm just wondering, why don't you just come out and just say it? We have nothing to do with him. This is hold us accountable, not Pat King.
Right,
Yesterday or 2 days ago, I did an interview on RT, and I addressed that very issue.
Okay.
They asked me about Pat King and a couple of other people. I explained that, look, because this is so organic, there are many people in different groups that have latched onto the movement. And as I said, anybody who behaves and understand that it's a positive environment and that this is about unity and family, whatever, they're more than welcome. But you can't police people's behavior, at least we can't. We're doing our best. We're trying to keep people at bay like that.
It's just that he's been saying that he's a very important part of this movement. He's one of the initial organizers, and that's
well, he can say a lot of things, and we believe in freedom of speech, and that's his right. But we have a non-for-profit corporation with a board of directors. We have a team. There's the command center of people that have been putting all the band-aids on and restructuring everything this week. And those are the people who have put this whole thing together. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of people. I just met some of them an hour ago that I was unaware of what they were doing. They were unaware of what I was doing, sort of thing. That's how massive this thing has become. And the fact that there's, you know, a few people on the side who are rabble-rousers and want to make this about them. And when we issued a statement at the very beginning about this individual who I've never met.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing our best to explain that that's not representative of our convoy. And I think, what was it, the third or fourth day when you left? We had a conversation, and I said, just send him home. And they tried.
Okay.
And he agreed. He said he was going to go home. And then he got in his truck and continued.
Okay.
So that's what we're dealing with.
And I can confirm that the legal lawsuit relating to the injunction was framed as though Pat King is part of the Freedom Convoy. And I confirmed in writing to the personal injury lawyer, and I made representations directly to the court to confirm that Pat King, that these folks and the Freedom Convoy have no affiliation with Mr. King whatsoever. And as has been pointed out, we do have freedom of speech. We have many people in many forums claiming to be spokespeople and representatives. These are the spokespeople and representatives.
Yeah, well, that's one of the problems. I mean, some response feedback I'm getting from people who are here protesting and support you guys. They're struck by the fact that there isn't very clear communication coming from the organizers, you know, so I didn't even know you had a PR person till today, and so some of what I've been hearing is that, you know, you should have a very clear message and frequent interactions. Whether, you know, I know you don't trust the media, but, you know, just tweet about it or put out a video and just make it very clear where you're coming from. And so this is coming from your own supporters. You know, they're saying that the communication has to be very clear.
Just one thing we are doing is putting out a daily intelligence report, as well as individual warnings on a specific event or a specific or something like that.
Where is this?
If one way to track it down, an easy way to find it would be to go to Twitter @TomTsek, @TOMTSEC. That's me, that's my Twitter account. Every time we create a new special report, I put it on there, and it's got a Google Drive link. So when you hit the Google Drive link, you will find not only the report I'm talking about, but all of the other intelligence reports and special warning reports that are there. And we're sending those out. We've started the last few days, they're getting out to the truckers, and now we're going to start getting them out to the media. So if you're curious about issues, events, what our views are, special events, that kind of stuff. So over the next couple of days, we're going to have one special report out on Chief Stoley, which will point out a bit of his background and how we feel about what he's doing good and perhaps not so good. We're going to have, weirdly enough, a report on spirituality. We have discovered that within the ranks of the people supporting us, there is a huge craving, a huge desire to see some sort of moral compass back in government again. The government has driven faith out of society, which is perhaps it's right, I don't know. But what we're seeing is people are longing for some sort of moral compass, some sort of set of values, some sort of virtue in government, because government right now is seen as, you know, unaccountable, irresponsible. Yeah, people just don't trust it anymore. So there's this awakening moving through the movement as well, which is quite startling. So we'll have something out on that. We're going to have a couple more coming out on why Justin Trudeau refuses to negotiate with us. And our suggestion is it's a lot more to do with just mandates. It's to do with his entire global project. But anyway, @TomTsek on Twitter, follow that Twitter account, and you'll see all our special intelligence reports coming up on a daily or twice a day basis.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you just said, that this is not just about the mandates. And I'm speaking to a few truckers, and everyone has their own view. Some are, but all of them are united in opposing the mandates. A few feel that they're not going to go anywhere till Justin Trudeau resigns. And I've tried to engage with them, and I've said, look, we're a democracy here. We have to follow the rule of law. There's a democratic process in place. We have elections, etc., etc. But you know, I've encountered this more than a few times, where they say that they're not going to go anywhere till Justin Trudeau resigns. And what is your take on that? I mean, I know last weekend you said that it is all about the mandates. You just want all mandates dropped. Is that still the case?
Yeah, that's still the case. I mean, you're going to find I have friends in trucking who are the same way, right? yeah, they would love Justin Trudeau to resign, but when they see now, this is why Candace taking over leadership of the Conservative Party, and now Pierre deciding he's going to run, kind of gives them hope. I don't think it's all that difficult to sell, I know to my friends that, yeah, we want him to resign, but we got to be practical. We got what we want, and the next thing is the upcoming election. And given what's happened here, I don't know how Trudeau remains in office, really. And I think most people realize that. The other thing I just wanted to double back when you said, we don't trust the media. We do. That's why you're here.
I should clarify. I'm just here on my own.
But you're
I'm coming as my own person here, not representing anybody because
but
I'm a freelancer. So.
But you're an independent freelancer.
Yeah,
you're fair, and you're objective, and we're not sitting here like that other news conference that happened, calling us names and trying to rabble-rise.
So would you be open to the idea of actually sitting down with a mainstream media person, CTV, CBC, and having a conversation with them?
That's something we'll consider over time, but right now it doesn't seem like we need it. And this is an opportunity for independent media to shine. One of the problems, or a couple of problems I mentioned in the past with mainstream media is they'll come in here, there'll be 5 of them, they'll bully everybody, their equipment is huge, they'll talk over everybody. It's like it's the 1929 crash and everybody wants to get the scoop, right? That's how they behave. Whereas, look at this, we're calm, there's no time constraints, we're respecting everybody. That's just not an environment that I think is conducive to what we want. And then we know, their primary tactic is lie by omission. So we're going to sit and do an interview with them, but we know it's going to be deceptively edited. So what's the point? And then at the same time, they're going to have nowhere near the amount of reach in terms of views than you guys will, right? Because the nature of media has changed, and I think this particular event is a pivotal moment for global media, where independent media starts to go on that journey to usurp all corporate media, and I think that's why they're behaving so maliciously towards us.
Well, one interesting comment a lot of comments I've been getting from American journalists, many of them are actually Canadian. They pointed something very interesting to me. Why is there no eyewitness coverage of this movement? What is going on? All I keep hearing are these are a bunch of white supremacists, but then I see these videos of people dancing and singing, and and there are these placards of love and unity and peace. What is going on? And these are journalists, New York Times, NBC News. They're perplexed why mainstream media here hasn't.
That's an excellent question. And actually, a relative of mine from Edmonton texted me yesterday, and she was very concerned. How's everything going? Are you okay down there? And I'm like, we're great. Like, this is like Canada Day on steroids here, right? So, but what they're seeing back home and what they're hearing from the mainstream media is very disappointing. I mean, we're out there, I'm hugging babies, and little children are giving me cards, thank you cards, right? A lady today gave me a bag of socks to give out to the truckers, and she had a picture on it that they had done, and a quote from her 10-year-old son thanking the truckers. This is what's happening out there for real. We're not here causing problems. Our people are not being aggressive. We've said right from the start, if you see people that are being aggressive, report it. Get their license plate. Contact us and let us report it, because that's not us and that's not who we are. And we've never come here with an agenda to be violent or aggressive or threatening. We come here with a simple message. Let's end the mandates. Let's get our people all back to work. Let people open up their businesses. Let children have birthday parties. I ran into some kids in the elevator, and they were talking about the swimming pool, and the swimming pool is empty. Like, these are our children that are begging for us to help save their futures, right? They're the ones holding up the signs. Thank you, truckers, for saving our freedoms. This is what it's all about. And then you have the mainstream media upsetting my family, who thinks I'm in danger, right? But you guys have been down there and you see what's going on. This is about love, this is about unity, and it's about coming together. And this is what we're seeing on the ground.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to monopolize your time here with all these questions, but, I've been, partly overseas, and I've been in this country for more than 20 years, and I've seen it change quite a bit. I'm really struck by the fact that, and I'm wondering if any one of you can answer this, I've seen elected officials threaten the protesters and say, we're going to identify you and take away your government aid, we'll come after you, we'll take away this money that you've raised. What's happened to Canada? Why are some officials here sounding like tin pot dictatorships? What dictators? What has happened? I'm trying to figure this out. But
also, what you've noticed is, we set up a soup kitchen. We've been cleaning up the streets.
Right.
Working with the homeless.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Not one Ottawa politician has been down there helping. And so they go on their little Zoom calls and call everybody names while we're out there working with the homeless because they've been negligent in their duties.
Well, I know this homeless guy on my street, and I'm surrounded by 5-6 different shelters.
Mm-hmm.
And I was walking home at 1 a.m. last night, and he said, I hope the truckers never go away.
Part of the mayor's strategy is to starve us out. You'll notice like the malls are closed, all the small businesses are closed, and it's an absolute sin because after 2 years of abuse from the government, lockdowns, shutdowns, you can only walk one way in the grocery aisle and all that stuff. All of a sudden now Ottawa is flooded with people. It's just overflowing on the weekend. All of these small businesses could be cashing in like crazy, making huge amounts of money. But because we're suffering from collective punishment being directed by Mayor Watson, they too must suffer. And as you know, now they've tried closing part of the Redo Center subway access, the thing, and that's where the homeless guys were hanging out. And now they've kicked them out of there. So yeah, we're seeing people talk about the homeless are suffering and this and that. It's like, well, we're out there, we're feeding and we're doing stuff for them. But if the mayor is going to subject legal protesters who are here to demand freedom to collective punishment because he doesn't like it, and if he's going to subject small business to collective punishment because he doesn't like it, I think he's going to find himself in legal trouble and political trouble in the next little while. If they tried that crap in a prison, that one prisoner acted like an idiot and they locked down the whole prison and started starving them, human rights people would be all over that in a heartbeat.
Let's say that there's a move, a forcible, the police or officials make a move to forcibly start removing the trucks here. What would that even look like? How would they? Do you guys have any idea of what that would?
The only forces in the country that could forcibly do that, and here we're treading on very thin ice. I'm ex-military. Just some of the people helping out on the convoy are ex-military. The only forces would be civic forces, which is to say tow truck companies that would have the physical capability to drag these trucks out of here. And I think we made it fairly clear those guys are walking away. Just too hard. The other force is the military, which has engineering vehicles that can do that kind of work. I don't see that happening. I don't, with the possible exception of, I'm on thin ice here, but the possible exception of the Prime Minister, I don't see any politician in the country dumb enough to turn the military.
So there's like we see on the ground, we see on the ground how peaceful it is, right? And it may sound extreme to say, but you have no concern at all about them using military action?
You can never say never, especially with a Prime Minister who has a history of sort of totalitarian centralization. He's a big part of the globalist movement, etc. But our defense minister came out when the Prime Minister was talking about this, and the chief of police was talking about it. The defense minister came out and said, not happening. And I think that's the thing. There's no mission here for the military. There's no aid to the civil power mission because the city's not suffering that way. If anybody's suffering, it's the truck drivers, not the civilian population. The only way they could do it was War Measures Act, and that is a response to a war or to internal violence. And if you recall correctly, we've had 2 War Measures Acts, one by a guy named Pierre Trudeau, which was, but in fairness to Pierre Trudeau, that was aimed at a terrorist force, and that was to maintain control of certain areas to bring the bombings down while the police went after the terrorists and got rid of them. The other one was the Oka crisis, which was an entirely different situation at that point. there is no violence here, there is no insurrection, there's no threat to the civil power, so there is no role for the military. Also, it would be curious to know, it would be interesting to know with the military itself where it would go.
I'd just add that from having traveled extensively through the downtown core and the Parliament block for a number of days now, when I first arrived, I thought we would get stopped several blocks away because you couldn't move and I'd end up walking. Any taxi I've been in or anybody who's given me a ride has picked me up right in front of the hotel and taken me to another hotel, just like when I was in Ottawa 3 years ago. This notion that there's somehow a restriction, and there are little side blocks in between other blocks where they are fully blocked off, but you just go one block up and do your left turn and you're good to go. So this notion that somehow there's a siege here, I really encourage people to come down and see for themselves, because what you see on the legacy media has no correlation whatsoever to what's happening on the ground here.
And the only blockade that I've seen, I experienced today when I was trying to go up to Parliament Hill, was a police car.
Yeah, the only blockades I've encountered as well are the police blockades where they're blocking off with several police vehicles roads for reasons I don't understand.
Yesterday there was, I read this article about the chief health officer, Teresa Tam, was suggesting that it's time to re-examine the vaccine passport, looking at possibility of going back to normalcy. Do you think that has to do with this movement, and how do you envision this will end? Is it possible that some chief health officer announce that we no longer need this kind of vaccine passport or these kind of measures?
Well, I think
but that has nothing to do with the with
nothing to do with truckers.
No,
Nothing to do with truckers. I think our movement here, I guess you'd call it the initial convoy, but now they're seeing all these other convoys of people who are getting inspired, getting their communities together. You see what's happening in the Alberta border. We don't actually have anything to do with it. There's another convoy in Vancouver, I think the BC area. So people are rightfully fed up all over the country, and I think it's more than just us. They're seeing that there's a wave of the general population that wants exactly that. That's just fed up and wants life to go back to normal. And ultimately, with our system of government, they're going to have no choice, that they'll have to do something to go back to some sense of normalcy. I think it's just a matter of time for them to figure out what's the messaging strategy, because political parties always do that. We gotta control the messaging, right? But once they figure out the messaging that works for them, and they know that if they just meet the basic requirements of all of these truckers who don't want the passports and the mandates, it's the easiest shot to score on the net. It's simple for them, and I think they'll do that. It's just a matter of time.
We've seen throughout this pandemic, it's almost like a cycle. There's reopenings, and every time there's a new variant, we see lots of harsh restrictions return. If you do get what you want, and the mandates are dropping you leave, and the government decides to reimpose these mandates because of a new variant, would you be willing to come back to Ottawa to pressure them again?
Of course.
I think you would see that happen in short order.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I mean, one thing's for sure, I don't think you would accuse any of these truckers of trusting the government, right? So when they say they're going to remove the mandates and remove the passports and all mandates, the convoys are going to start making their way back home, but they might not be going so quickly. They may take their time just to see that everything is going to the way the government promises. But I think once the government makes that promise, if they try to reverse, they're done. They have zero legitimacy and credibility, even amongst their own base, because you can't, one day it's this, one day it's no. Look what it did to Trudeau's reputation when they were doing that, or Doug Ford's reputation, right? Their base of support started to turn on them because one day to the other it changed, and that's a big part of what's angered some people, right?
Speaking of bases of support, we're being accused of being a fringe minority by the Prime Minister. So I have a master's degree in political science, which I accidentally got at one point in my life. So just for fun, let's say there's the list in Canada put forth by Elections Canada of every registered voter in Canada. That's 100%. Now, in the last election that was just held last fall, Justin Trudeau got 20% of all registered voters to vote for him. And I think it was actually 20 point something or 21 point something. But it was 20% of all registered voters voted for Justin Trudeau. The other 80% either didn't vote at all or didn't vote for Justin Trudeau. So to be perfectly clear, the fringe minority is the Liberal Party of Canada that speaks on behalf of its 20% mandate. The other 80% of the country isn't represented by the voice of Mr. Trudeau. He is the fringe minority. The rest of us are the majority.
Do you have a message for any citizens in Ottawa that are currently upset with the current situation, with the noise, the honking? There seems to be a lot of mainstream media outlets reporting on that. They're saying that citizens in Ottawa are upset. Do you have a message for those people?
I personally haven't encountered them. I saw one or two videos that went viral, and it looked like somebody from the Justin Trudeau.
Oh, here's another message as well. People across the country are losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, they're losing their businesses, they're losing their trucks, by the way.
Right.
They have suffered for the last 2 years under a series of arbitrary and capricious measures which advance and then they retreat, so everybody thinks it's time to get back into business. I know a restaurant owner here bought a whole crap load of food for one weekend. Friday, they closed the restaurants for the weekend and he loses several $1,000s worth of food. So I know there's a lot of people complaining, but let's remember most of Ottawa's government, huge number of civil servants here, they haven't missed a paycheck. Yeah. They've got pay raises. Some of them have got back pay. Most of them are working from home. Some of them who can't work from home are just doing nothing and still getting paid. So yes, it's unfortunate that they feel bad about the horns. Yes, it's unfortunate they feel bad about the disruption. But the rest of the country is hurting.
Can I comment on that? Yes, I understand it is annoying for some. My own children, who love hockey, told me within the last 2 days, my oldest daughter, she's a great hockey player, my son, who loves it, they both told me that they don't even want to play hockey in our hometown anymore because of how isolated and alienated they feel because of the position that we have taken on this issue. So, the people dealing with the honking, they're not the only ones that are dealing with the impact of all of these mandates.
Would you say that, to put it concisely, the objective is just restoring the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms for all Canadians? And then a follow-up to that is, if that gets met, if that objective is met, just your thoughts on how do we keep them accountable to continuing to honor that? Are there any fail-safes that we should have had, that we didn't have, that can be suggested to make sure, and my feeling is one of them, we all, as Canadians, every citizen has to be familiar with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and what the sections are. It's my little cousin can understand it and read it. So we should probably all be familiar. So is that the objective? And is there anything, just thoughts, ideas of how we can hold our politicians accountable for actually honoring that commitment if it's made and we can all go home and get back to work?
Good question, difficult to answer. What we're hoping, we've discussed this privately, is that there will be momentum from here. People have felt, we all know this, people have felt very demoralized for the past several years. We've all been called names because we want freedom, we don't want identity politics, we don't want division, therefore we are racist. That's what we've been dealing with. And just before this news conference, we're getting all these thousands of messages. Got a message from a woman who is a single mother, 2 kids, and she said for the past 2 years, she just didn't want to live anymore. She was suffering depression, and her children were depressed, and she was done. And she saw this, and she said, "You've given me hope in my life." And she came to Ottawa. She's not from Ottawa, and she brought her children, and her little voice says, "Mommy, the truckers are going to free us, and we're going to have our lives back." We have heard that thousands of times, and it's really difficult. But it's amazing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with social unrest movements, G7, G8, G20, Song of the Americas, President Bush visits, that sort of thing. I was also a security and operational risk manager for a G10 central bank, and we did a lot of look at social unrest movements in Europe. So to directly answer your question, what can we do to guarantee that the politicians will stay on the line? I don't actually have an answer for you. I don't know how we do that. What I can tell you is that what I saw in Europe when I went to riots in Athens and places like that to see what was going on, is they have a method over there of getting their politicians to pay attention, more so than we do. A couple 100,000 people show up at the town square and say, we're going to burn the place down if you guys don't fix this. So what we're seeing here in Canada, I hope, is the start of a movement which is going to go national, where the politicians are going to have to start looking over their shoulders and say, well, if we do this, what are those guys going to do? If the people fear the government, that's called tyranny. If the government fears the people, that's called liberty. And I think in Canada we are seeing the start of an awakening where people are going to start reacting. So right now, I mean, the Alberta crossing just had 3 times, like there's a huge pylon yesterday. They've now increased the number of vehicles there by about 300%. The Sarnia crossing was just closed. Toronto's having problems, Quebec's having problems, Ottawa's having problems. And I think what we're going to see is people are just going to start going to the government and saying, no, get this fixed. And if you don't, we're realizing that we have the power to shut things down. I suspect that the government will be resistant to that message for some time to come because they live in their own little Ottawa bubble. Most people don't realize that Canada for Ottawa is only 20 kilometers wide. There's 10 kilometers east of Parliament Hill and there's 10 kilometers west of Parliament Hill, and that's Canada to those guys. They have no clue what's going on in the rest of the country. But I think we've brought the message to Ottawa now that the kinetic people, the people that work, live, move, deal in terms of horsepower, weight, fuel, that sort of stuff, farmers, truckers, those people are bringing the message to Ottawa, and now that message is amplifying across the land. So I think there's a start of a pushback. I think it's a real movement, and I think over term it's going to rattle the politicians, which frankly in a democratic society is a good thing.
I have a question regarding some of the accusations that some, even in the, on the right, people have accused you of not following law and order and walking the rules against law. Maybe we can get a legal opinion on this too. Do you think that laws are being broken by the convoy protesters? And if yes, do you think that there may be justification for that, or in that sense?
All Canadians have the right under Section 2 of the Charter for free expression and assembly. And under Section 52 of the Constitution Act, the Charter is the supreme law of Canada. It overrides any municipal bylaw. So our position is that the truckers are exercising their constitutional rights in an effort to get the ones that have been taken restored.
What do you say to some people who say this is illegal? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really understand the.
It's not.
That this protest is illegal. That you didn't have the permission to be here. And what do you say to that?
I'd say the same thing I just said.
Yeah.
But understand, I can't speak to every detailed fact situation.
Right.
I'm speaking generally that all Canadians have the right, as set out under the Charter, and if a federal law, a provincial law, or a municipal bylaw interferes with those rights, it's of no force and effect because it violates the Charter.
We've seen pastors in Alberta be locked up for not complying with COVID rules. Do you think that there is a way that these organizers could be locked up for their protests? And maybe to you guys, are you guys willing to go to jail, even if it's arbitrarily, to fight for your cause, to restore, the freedoms for Canadians?
Yes.
Yes.
For me.
Absolutely.
This is my hill.
Justin Trudeau jailing a Métis woman.
And someone who used to protect him.
We're in the same zone. Sorry.
We're running out of time.
Yeah, we got 5 more minutes, at least for Tamara.
Just one more question. There's a fellow who I know. He said, "What if the Canadians allowed the truckers to come into Canada?" He said, "But the Americans won't let the truckers go into the United States without
without a
The
pass.
shot, without the shot.
I can address that.
Okay, good.
The question is whether, based on the science related to health and the science related to the health impacts of COVID, particularly Omicron, is whether or not it's a valid interference with truckers' charter rights to require them to be vaccinated. It doesn't make it valid. It doesn't make it a valid contravention of their charter rights if some other country has a similar requirement. There's movements in the US and legal challenges that I understand are occurring where the truckers there are doing a similar challenge. And if the reasoning of the US Supreme Court was, well, Canada's doing it, that wouldn't be a valid legal proposition. It has to have merits on its own within the country. So it's frankly, and I've heard that many times too, so it's a good question to ask, but frankly, legally and constitutionally, it's a red herring.
Yes, Tom, what is your role in the movement? So
What is it now? A lot has changed in a week.
a lot changes in a week. As one leader said, there are decades when only weeks happen, and there are weeks when decades happen. Currently, as I explained on another interview yesterday, my role has kind of evolved into, from a military perspective to the military audience, I would say I'm G2 for the mission. That essentially means I'm the intelligence officer for the mission. I see my primary role as protective intelligence. The rings that we put on that, the first ring that we look as being responsible for are the truck drivers themselves and their equipment. That's our primary function, is protective intelligence for those people. Are we allowed to say those people anymore? Am I going to get deplatformed? For those truckers. The second ring out is for those people who work with us, which is, say, the Ottawa Police, the Durham Regional, the other, however many police forces are here, the paramedics, the firefighters, those kinds of people. And then the third ring out for protective intelligence is the citizenry of Ottawa. So that's sort of our primary mission, is protective intelligence for those folks. My secondary role is daily intelligence reporting and special intelligence reports on certain events, certain threats, or whatever. So yeah, I'm sort of the intelligence officer for the mission, if you will. We have some other folks doing what I would call hard security, which is physical protection of assets and people, which differs from my role. And we have other ex-military folks here doing what military folks would recognize as G3, which is to say operations. They're running which truck goes where, which logistic guy goes where. We need 7 trucks at the airport. We need 20 trucks over there. We need this much fuel there. So that's a function that's being filled by another military guy as well, because that's the kind of stuff we're good at doing.
The media is basically saying that this is, legacy media is trying to say that this is uncontrollable. How in control of the situation do you guys feel? If for some reason, whatever reason, you guys decided to call this off, would the truckers listen to you guys and would it all be gone?
We have an amazing relationship with them. The thing is, truckers, there's a certain, reputation that some people in urban centers have when it comes to truckers, it's quite silly. It's such a heavily regulated industry that they're not dumb people. Whether it's ELDs, their DOTs, their scheduling, how many hours they can drive. They run their own businesses when they're owner-operators. And most of these guys are small business owners, right? So they're very articulate, they understand rules, they understand strategy, and they understand we have an objective. I would say that's almost 100% of the people who are here. So I'm not terribly worried. And the interactions and communications we've been having with them, it's stellar. Like, we're all, I've talked to a bunch of them. We're talking about my brother's truck, my truck, their truck. There's some sort of camaraderie. There's a sense of brotherliness between truckers. So I'm not terribly worried about them going on the fridge and saying, "Oh, I'm not leaving." And they want to go back to work. Like, this is part of the societal problem is we see so much, protests and activists from a certain side of the political spectrum. We don't do this because we're busy. We got to work. We got to pay our taxes. We got to raise families, right? So we don't really have the time for this. They don't want to be here. They want to be on the road making money. So as soon as these things are lifted, you watch how quickly those guys want to go back to work and start, filling contracts. Yeah.
Sorry, Ottawa Police have just announced that anyone providing food or fuel to the convoy may be subject to arrest. What is your response to that?
That's weird. I don't know.
That's being dealt with over the command center right now. We're aware of the issue. We know what's going on. It goes back to the earlier discussion about Mayor Watson's collective punishment strategy of trying to punish the business owners and the convoy owners, and that's one more, how do I put, escalation. He escalating, trying to do that. The first thing they did was stop trucks coming in, so we couldn't bring in diesel fuel and gasoline by truck. So then we said, all right, we'll bring it in like 3/4 ton trucks and stuff like that. So they blocked that. Then we're bringing it in by 5-gallon jerry cans. Now they're blocking that. So the reality is we'll find another way around it. Also highly, highly questionable as to whether that's legal or not. And that gets back to the issue of charter rights versus some local municipal bylaw that says you're not allowed to pull a wagon down the street.
And also remember that anytime Mayor Watson or other politicians like him talk about leadership, anybody who's been in a leadership role knows it's very difficult because your job is to listen and to de-escalate situations, not escalate the way he is. So I think he's putting an end to his own political career, and I wish him luck in retirement.
I guess my legal comment would be the notion that the government can arrest a Canadian for providing food to another Canadian is perhaps the most un-Canadian thing I've heard so far.
And if I may, from a law enforcement perspective, you don't have to follow orders. I hear that all the time. Oh, they're just following orders. They're just following orders. You don't have to follow an order if you feel that it is unjust. So it's time for law enforcement to step up, okay? The truckers have done more to stand up for me and my family than my own brothers and sisters in law enforcement. And this is what law enforcement should have done months ago, in my opinion. They're supposed to be the protectors of the country, of the Constitution, of people's fundamental rights and freedoms. So, no matter what the talking heads are saying at the top, at the ground level, what are you prepared to do? Are you prepared to arrest someone for carrying a jerry can of gasoline to a truck driver who's here to fight for all of our freedoms? Because I've seen mothers get arrested in hockey rinks for watching their kids play sports. That's disgusting. What's the line? Where's the line get crossed where you're no longer willing to support what the management is telling you to do? That's all.
I'm sorry, I have to say something here. There are children in the convoy. Truckers have brought their families, they brought children, and for some official to order that they should not provide food for children or gasoline to keep the trucks running so that the kids can stay warm inside the truck, I cannot actually believe my ears. You have to know who's there. People think that there's a bunch of great big 6'4" burly men that are here. That's not true. That's not right. That's horrible.
Has there been any word of police officers or law enforcement coordinating and coming together and having conversations amongst officers about that topic, about where the line is and who they actually serve? Because they're being put in a very tough spot, and I've heard some people talk about, well, why don't they all come together? I don't know if you've heard anything or you have any thoughts about that, or can inspire any words of inspiration for officers that might be listening to this, that they have much more power and autonomy than maybe they believe.
I do know there are a lot of officers that are privately in communication with each other over WhatsApp and Signal, who've been watching this across the country, who feel exactly as Chad just articulated. And as one of them said to me the past couple of days, I swore an oath to the charter, not to a political party, and I'm not going to forget that. And I'm hoping the rest of law enforcement remember that. And that seems to be the overwhelming opinion, but police have, and Tom has done a lot of work on this, have been so politicized on the top level amongst the police brass that they always feel like they're under threat of reprimand, but it's getting to the point where they don't care anymore.
Well, I do have to ask, like, worst case scenario, if they do start really strictly enforcing that, or if they even try to maybe deploy tear gas or to try to, you know, get the truckers up, how would you respond, or maybe how would you go from there if they try to forcibly remove you from the capital?
I don't think we actually have a position on that, but we're hoping it doesn't get to there. What I could tell you would happen if there was a physical attack. I suspect you would see thousands of people come to Ottawa, bringing trucks, farm equipment, whatever, saying no.
I'd say it would unite people even more in the peaceful non-compliance.
That's right.
That would be such a egregious overstep in my mind that I think that would be a mistake on their part.
Yeah. We don't need a Ceausescu style regime here, and I don't think we're going to get one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, everybody, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And if you have any further questions, you know our email addresses, Twitter handles, whatever.
I haven't checked my email in 2 weeks,
That's
so
true.
sorry.
Twitter is really good for us. We're getting overwhelmed with messages of support, but please don't feel hesitant to reach out with additional questions, and we'll do another one of these. Let's see how things transpire over the next week and go from there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.